I believe Scott's question will be addressed to you, Representative Flider, first.
Representative Flider, school vouchers have been discussed in the past legislative session for the Chicago area. Being that education is in the state that it's in, would you support a call for vouchers statewide if it's brought forward in the General Assembly?
The voucher question actually was brought up for the General Assembly this past year, and I voted against it. And my concern with the proposal that was presented was that it would take away dollars from the public education system, and additionally, it could take dollars away from downstate schools and downstate educators. So I thought that would be something that I could not vote for, and I certainly want to look at every proposal that would reform our educational system, one which would improve our schools, ensure that our schools and our teachers and our systems are held accountable so that we could have better results and better educated students. But I did not think the voucher system was the best approach for Illinois or downstate schools.
I don't believe vouchers are the solution to our problem here in education. As I mentioned earlier, pensions are underfunded by $80 billion. Decatur School District, District 61 here, is owed $5.8 million currently by the state of Illinois. So we need to fund these obligations, and you need to go through the budget line item by line item to take a look at the measures where there are waste and where we can free up some of these dollars and put them back into education.
Mr. Brown, Bailey's question will be addressed to you first.
The state's support for education funding is in shambles. Transportation reimbursements have been cut and many districts remain behind in promised state fundings. When do you expect the state to catch up on its payments to schools?
Well, I would hope sooner rather than later, but it all depends on who you elect in November. Over the past 8 years, we've seen debt on the rise rather than payment of our bills. For instance, 8 years ago, our debt was about $30 billion. Today, our overall debt, $130 billion. So we need to focus on the waste that is in government by going through the budget line item by line item, which Kansas and Texas both have done in the past, by cutting aid to illegal immigrants who are here illegally, obviously, and so I don't believe they should be soaking up our dollars here in Illinois.
The state of Illinois certainly has, because of the economic downturn, faced some of its biggest economic challenges ever. We've actually had, as a state, to cut our budget twice for the first time in 2 years, for the first time since the 1930s. We've had to cut the budget, but the one area where we've been able to fund, I think, adequately, as much as possible, relative to other cuts that have been made, is education. We've been able to actually appropriate dollars toward education consistent with previous years. However, because of the cash flow situation, obviously, the state is behind in its payments. I would tell you that among the things that we've done this year to try and improve our financial health of our state from a long-term standpoint is we did pass pension reforms this year. Those pension reforms will save the state $250 billion in future pension liabilities in the future. That is real money that will help fund our schools and our programs in the future.
Representative Flider, actually this question will be directed at you first, Chris.
The 101st District is a place of growing cultural, religious, and economic distinction, and one of increasing importance on the international stage with the residents of large multinational companies. What are your plans to try and relate to a group of constituents that have vastly diverse and differing lifestyles and economic struggles than your own?
We're blessed here to be called the agribusiness capital of the world. We have incredible educational opportunities and institutions in Richland and Millikan University. We have biotech opportunities, and at the same time, we have a education coalition that is working very hard to ensure that the needs of our industries are met and that our students are met so that they get a good education and get a good job. And those things are vitally important for our area. And by working with our leaders who are working in this area to attract good paying jobs to our area, industries, and in addition, working with our educators to ensure that the educational programs that we have here are the best they can be, I feel will help us meet the needs of our community in the future.
Well, I pride myself on working with folks of all ages, races, and backgrounds. When I ran for city council here in Decatur, I knocked on roughly 10,000 doors and spoke to people, as I mentioned, at their doorstep, regardless of color or creed. That provided me insight and the ability to grow and understand their personal plights and advocate for them on the city council. Here in this election, I'm doing the exact same thing, knocking on doors, talking to as many folks as I possibly can to understand their concerns with government.
Representative Flider, I'm sorry about that. Scott's first question will be addressed to you.
Representative Flider, you recently discussed details on a proposal that you have forthcoming over performance-based budgeting. If this would become law, what would your top spending priorities be?
The performance-based budgeting proposal, which I've begun to outline, is a result of some discussions that we've held in Springfield. And what it would do is it would, as I mentioned earlier, look at the pot of money that we have available and establish priorities for dealing with those dollars. Among the approaches that I would, or the goals that I would set forth would include education, would include job creation, and would include working with our community leaders to attract business to our area. I think those are things that will help us generate more money and more revenue. But every dollar that would be spent through this proposal, I believe, should be viewed as an investment in our future. We also want to ensure that those who need our assistance the most, our help the most, those who are in nursing homes, the elderly, and others who actually could stay at home without having to go to a nursing home. Those are the kinds of expenditures that would help us avoid future liabilities. Thank you.
Mr. Brown, would you also like to answer that
Sure.
question?
Well, I believe budgeting reform is long overdue here in the state of Illinois. For instance, PAYGO has been introduced a number of times. Through this method, the state would only pay out money that it's already taken in. So you're entitled to a balanced budget automatically. I think that's long overdue, and the state needs to refocus on a balanced budget. Over the past 3 years, the state has had an unbalanced budget here in the state of Illinois. And that violates our own Constitution in Illinois. However, there's no enforcement measure, and I believe there should also be an enforcement measure for that.
Mr. Brown, this next question will actually be toward you.
Mr. Brown, many people feel that government is no longer in touch with the taxpayers out there. How do you plan to stay connected with voters if elected?
As I mentioned earlier, constituent concerns are of utmost importance to myself. Regardless of what background you come from, you deserve to be heard. And so that's why I'm trying to reach out as much as possible, knocking on doors, accepting any phone calls that might come in, and listening to what your concerns might be so we can properly address those.
One of the things that I think is important to recognize is work ethic. And work ethic in terms of working with the people in your district, the services that you provide through your office. And in my experience as a former mayor, work ethic is not simply going door to door and asking people what they think. Work ethic is not only establishing goals, but getting those things done. Things like we've been able to accomplish when I was mayor in Mount Zion, improving our economic climate, improving recreational opportunities, setting goals and getting those things done over the years, working with people. And it's working with people and staying connected that way to ensure that we are using their tax dollars not in an unfoolish way, but in wise ways so that we can, as a state and as an area, get the most bang for our buck. Things like providing tornado sirens for the city of Windsor, for assisting communities with bike trails, for building roads and bridges to ensure that our commerce can continue to flourish. Those are the kinds of things that seem to me to be very important as we work with taxpayers' dollars.
Chris, I believe, has a question for you, Mr. Brown.
Now I'll restate the question slightly differently for you, Representative Flider. Mr. Brown, you have been tagged as part of the Illinois GOP youth wave by some Republican groups. You are running for an office that will put you on the same playing field as men and women with more life experience and political experience. With this in mind, what makes you qualified to represent the 101st District in the Illinois House of Representatives? And Representative Flider, do you feel that your past performance and future promises will continue to keep you qualified?
Well, just as in the investment world, I believe a diverse investment is the best investment. And here for the state of Illinois, I think we need some serious experience in the State House, but I believe we need some fresh ideas as well. We need somebody that's going to go out there and push their opinions regardless of what other lobbyists might think, but are willing to work on the behalf of the people instead. I think I bring that to the State House, and I think you've seen that on City Council as well. I'm not afraid to buck the system if I believe it's what's best for the residents.
Again, with regard to your question, obviously the voters make these decisions in terms of whether they think the representatives are doing an adequate job. I tell you, I work awfully hard. I have worked awfully hard. I've dedicated my adult life to public service. And I think that means something. And I think that the results that we've been able to achieve as mayor and some of the goals that I've set forth and some of the things that we've been able to accomplish as state representative will make a difference to people. You know, one of the things I think is important to recognize is that you need to fight. You need to fight for your district. You need to fight for what's right. Twice in the last couple of years, I passed legislation out of the House as the chief sponsor for the state to pay its bills on time, for the administration to come up with a plan to pay its bills, to ensure that we're doing what families must do. Twice it was squashed by the Chicago leaders. When I opposed Governor Rob Blagojevich and his health care expansion and the gross receipts tax, he came after me. He tried to find somebody to run against me. But I think that those are the right things to do for our people. It doesn't matter whether it's Republican or Democrat, you need to represent your people in your district, and that's what I've been able to do.